her face slashed by scissors, and her legs cut with a rawhide whip soon ignited public outrage. Mary Ellen's tragic condition appealed to a newly emerging Victorian consciousness. In post-Civil War America, the cry for social reform was everywhere, from abolition to temperance. But at the center of these movements were the early suffragettes, says University of Wisconsin historian Linda Gordon, an expert on the history of family violence.
It was that first feminist movement, which was in many ways at its peak in the 1870s, which really had the gall to challenge family structure, to challenge patriarchy, and to challenge the absolute authority of parents over their children.
Women may have dominated the reform movements, but even they were not strong enough to change the common treatment of children. Spare the rod and spoil the child was not an idle saying. Children were their parents' chattel, and the whip a necessary part of childhood. So was hard physical labor. Images of children in cotton mills, coal mines, and labor camps helped the upper-class Victorian mind develop a modern concept of child abuse. But it was a concept based on prejudice.
In order to understand who these people were, these women who started this campaign, you also have to understand who the people were that they saw as the culprits in cases of child abuse. They were clearly poor. They were, to a very large extent, either immigrants or migrants. Their idea was to help the immigrants rather than simply to police them. And in a certain sense, although if we were to meet these people today, we would probably be terribly offended by their arrogance. But in a certain sense, their very arrogance is what enabled them to start this powerful movement, because they were so certain of themselves.
In the 1870s, there were virtually no advocates for children. Poor or parentless, children were often sent to orphanages, where they were easily farmed out as indentured servants. Children were not a public responsibility. Neither the police nor her friends would help Mrs. Wheeler save Mary Ellen. So she turned to a surprising ally, the Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. In those days, dogs and horses had more champions than children. But the society came to Mary Ellen's defense. She was, they argued, a member of the animal kingdom and entitled to their protection. They took their case to court, and for 5 days, city newspapers were filled with stories of the battered child. Finally, with public opinion on their side, the society won Mary Ellen's freedom. Their celebrated victory helped inspire the modern movement against child abuse. From now on, the rights of parents over their children would be challenged in homes and courtrooms across the nation.
Do you remember if you said anything regarding your husband and showering together?
No.
Did you ever observe your father to be in bed together?
No, it was once, the time...
It is this legacy of government intervention into family life that Robert Levanta has inherited as he begins to hear testimony from the child's mother, a mother who now very personally feels a challenge to her right as a parent.
You allow her to go out to parties with her friends from school?
No.
Did you want her to have different types of friends?
Yes.
What kind of friends?
Speaking through an interpreter, the mother denies her daughter was molested, saying the stories were fabricated as revenge against a strict and domineering father.
Did her father ever have any arguments over the way that she wanted to dress and the way that he wanted to dress?
He would call attention to her, to the way that she would dress.
Over the last 50 or 60 years, I think we've relied upon the state increasingly to provide the parenting skills that we otherwise look to families to provide. Education now includes teaching children homemaking, teaching children gym, teaching children a variety of skills that previously were either left undone or left to the family. Now we look to the state to do that. Once the state is involved that much in a child's life, the role of public policy in determining what is appropriate parenting likewise increases.
Now ready to testify, the investigating officer tells a different version of the case.
Did she go into specifics as to what occurred during that incident?
She said that her father told her to lay down on the bed, and then he removed his clothes and had sex with her. He told her not to tell anybody because he'd beat her up.
Did she make any statements that she would try to get her mother's attention in some way?
Yes.
What did she say?
She said that she would scream and cry out trying to get her mother's attention.
Did you ask...
Attorney Ella Martin represents the Department of Children's Services. She believes the child's first stories of molestation are true, but she is not always comfortable with the role the court plays in family life.
I believe that it comes in under the... In a way, what we're doing with the dependency court is coming in and saying, we, the court, will make a better parent than you. And we have to be real careful when we do that. There are some people who perhaps should never be parents, and they are. And you have to work with what you get. But there are also situations where the family just needs a little bit of help, a little bit of breathing space. There's a lot of stress going on in society, and sometimes the family just can't cope.
You heard the police officer's testimony a few minutes ago, right?
Yes.
She said that you saw Mr. touching his breasts. Was she lying?
¿Estaba mintiendo?
Sí.
Yes.
Levanter has the power to reunite or separate this family. Whatever he chooses, he bears the burden of the child's safety.
It may be that what's going to have to happen is either the child is going to have to be permanently placed outside the home of a parent, or that the father would then have to leave the home and allow the mother and her child to get on with their lives. That often happens when the evidence of molestation is clear and there is denial that the molestation occurred. At that point, it's very difficult to feel safe or feel that you're protecting children if you send them back home.
Having to decide when to send a child home or when to enter a family's life in the first place is a bit like playing Russian roulette, says Deanne Tilton, director of the Los Angeles Interagency Council on Child Abuse and Neglect, an organization that helps identify and treat child abuse.
It is a very difficult issue to take sides on, because the minute you see a child who's 13 years old who says, why didn't you let me go home sooner? I don't have a home to go home to now. Or parents who say, you completely ruined our lives for 5 years. Now you want to send home a disturbed 13-year-old. Why didn't you work with us sooner? You wonder, what did we think we were doing? On the other hand, when you review cases of little kids, 1-year-old, 2-year-old, who were seen by a doctor and a social worker and a law enforcement officer time and time again, and who were returned home to those parents, and that child is now a coroner's case, you say, boy, I don't think we need to worry so much about reuniting families as protecting kids.
The 19th century child savers weren't much better at finding a balance between family sanctity and individual rights. For over 30 years, they led an aggressive campaign to protect children. But among many immigrants, they were known as the cruelty and seen as patronizing and overzealous as they took children from their homes, usurping the rights of fathers and mothers. Parents could fight back by taking their kids to court. The stubborn child laws had been on the books for more than 200 years.
Parents would use the stubborn child laws to defend themselves against child abuse accusations. They allowed a parent to bring a child to court without any allegation of a specific crime, but simply on the claim that the child is stubborn, recalcitrant, unmanageable. And at the parent's behest, the child could be committed usually to a kind of indentured servitude, which was a form of punishment.
By the turn of the century, criticisms against the Victorian child savers and a general decline in the reform movements caused child abuse to fade as a public crusade. Professional social workers replaced upper-class charity matrons, and our notion of who and what caused child abuse changed dramatically.
It became less fashionable to think or say, well, these immigrants are just of inferior stock. And before that, there was actually a widespread belief that many of them were just biologically inferior, stupid, or less cultured.